Good morning, y'all. Good morning, everybody. Let's maybe get started here. I'm so excited to see y'all, and I appreciate it. I know it's a really busy time of year, but I know that each of you know how much this matters to me and how much opportunity I really think that the IPSI program holds in the work that y'all do. So I thought maybe before we get too close to session, it might be good to begin that discussion. And then there's time for more as we move forward on this. So before we get started, would y'all just join me in a word of prayer for a minute? Dear Heavenly Father, as we come to you this morning, as we have people who are out in our state that are listening and watching and have huge needs, we just ask that you help us to open our hearts, our ears, our eyes, our minds to really embrace this opportunity, and those that are here today to update us and bring us strong messages of hope for those who can really benefit from these services. And I ask that you be watchful over all those who are on our roads, some that may be heading here, some that may be listening from afar, and just bless our great state of Georgia. In your name we pray, amen. Okay, before we get started too, I want to, and you'll hear me do this again as we move forward with the larger meeting, but certainly this committee is touched and saddened by several things. I'll start, first of all, by the fact that you've all probably heard that our speaker is not going to be running for speaker this next week. So that is, he was a champion of much of this. So we'll keep him in our thoughts and prayers right now. And then Wayne Howard and his sudden walk to heaven. I'm so sure. What a good man. He was so faithful and such a good member of this committee and served his community well. So we'll keep them in our thoughts and prayers and their families. And let's get down to business. We are here today to talk about inclusive post-secondary education and have an update presented by the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities. I think, Darcy, Rob will be starting with you. So whichever is most comfortable for you, whether you'd like to sit or be at the podium, whichever works. And with your slides, I don't know what.
Can you all hear me?
We can hear you very well.
Right.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Madam Chair, and to any members of this subcommittee that may be joining us online. We are so grateful. We want to thank you all so much for having us here today. So as y'all know, this fall, I became the executive director of the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities. And for us at GCDD, our colleagues at the Center for Leadership and Disability, all the inclusive post-secondary programs. Microphone down. Okay. Oh, I see. Understood. There, that's better, isn't it? All right. But on behalf of all the IPSC programs across Georgia, and most importantly, our students and their families, now our alumni and their families too, we just want to acknowledge that we really appreciate this opportunity to give you all a really thoughtful update about IPSC across Georgia. So before we get started, Madam Chair, if I may, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge another person who recently left us, and that is an American hero and a hero of the disability community from right here in Georgia, Lois Curtis. Lois was sent to live at Georgia Regional when she was 11 years old, and she spent her teens and her 20s in and out of institutional environments. She and Elaine Wilson changed the course, not just of their own lives, but literally of countless other folks with disabilities and behavioral health conditions all over the United States. And that was when they became the plaintiffs in the Olmstead case. But Lois was an acclaimed artist. She was a woman of very deep faith, and she was a woman of vision. And I say that because I think she had to be, because having gone into an institution at 11 years old, it amazes me that Lois had the vision to see that her life could be different and was brave enough to pursue that. So what that brings me to when I think about our meeting today is I've been wondering if we hadn't had a Lois Curtis, would we even have inclusive post-secondary education? If we hadn't had this woman, Lois and Elaine, standing up and saying, I want out of this institution, I can live in my community, would we have even had this wave of students saying, hey, I can go to college, I can build the life that I want, I can make my own choices? I really don't know if we would. So I wanted to just acknowledge Lois and her legacy at the start here. Thank you. And on the subject of legacy, of course, this coming legislative session marks 10 years, which is hard to believe in some ways, but 10 years since the General Assembly began appropriating funds to support inclusive post-secondary education. And at that time, 10 years ago, I was learning what inclusive post-secondary education was. I think a lot of folks here at the General Assembly and folks around the state were doing the same. And at that time, we had one IPSC program in all of Georgia. Today we have 8 programs and almost 150 students. And we also have an alumni base, which we certainly did not have 10 years ago, but we have these alums full of young people and their families whose lives have been changed by IPSC. And we're going to share some more with you about that later today. But I will say, just as a preview, we have alumni who were the first in their families to complete a college program. We have alumni who have gone on not only to support themselves, but their families. We have alumni in their chosen careers. We have alumni who are supervising other people. So we really have some fantastic stories, and I can't wait to get to that part of the presentation and share that with y'all. Not that the rest of the presentation isn't great, but that is, I think, my favorite. So for y'all in this subcommittee, though, you have been a part of this journey with us all along. You have been supporting IPSC almost 10 years, and we are so very grateful for that. And we also want to acknowledge that support has really perpetuated our success here in Georgia with IPSC. And that has allowed us to grow. It's been a major contributor to the student success and to the alums. And it's also why Georgia is looked at as a national leader in inclusive post-secondary. So our presentation today is really around past, present, and future of IPSC, just a little bit about where we've been, quite a bit about where we are now and where we want to go. And in the spirit of where we want to go, I did want to mention that more broadly for the disability community, something we anticipate doing in the coming session and years is working with y'all on this committee, working with your colleagues in the Senate, as well as the governor's office on waivers and direct support professional wages, because we really see that as a huge opportunity, not just human services, but an economic opportunity for this community in the state of Georgia. But that said, we want to turn the focus back to IPSC today, and hopefully technology is on our side. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started with an IPSC video.
I grew up in Jefferson. I grew up in a little town called Houston. A lot of people don't know it. If you fall asleep, if you're driving through there and you fall asleep, you won't know you drove through it.
For as long as he can remember, the University of Georgia was where Wyatt Martin wanted to go to college.
Georgia's been my #1 school for years. It's always kind of been a family thing. Georgia's always been that school. Never really thought about anything else.
Martin is one of 124 students enrolled in one of Georgia's 8, soon to be 9, inclusive post-secondary education programs, IPSE for short. Programs that within 2 short years changes a student from,
am I gonna fit in at college? Is there gonna be people that just don't respect the way I am or respect the way I do things?
to,
I'm so glad that I'm in this program because they have learned to accept me for who I am.
college is where life is lived.
I went to Callaway Gardens to go to a sanctuary where I can look at different kinds of butterflies.
Where lifelong friendships are made.
I made some friends here and had some fun with them and play games and go to their basketball. I watch them practice for basketball.
Where dreams are born.
My goal is to be a basketball coach here. And then my goal is to maybe after that maybe coach a professional basketball team.
And where careers are launched.
I like my eyes, my ears, my nose. I like my fingers and my toes. My most favorite part about being a teacher here is getting to just play with the kids and try to relate to them and maybe even teaching them a few new things or even reading a story to them. That's one thing I'm really good at. Big animated voice. Like I even like tried to voice match a few characters and, you know, just like even show emotions through the face. I like myself because I'm me.
88% of Georgia's Ipsy College students graduate from their programs. That's nearly 30% higher than the national average and almost twice as high as the state average. On average, 54% of Ipsy College graduates find employment 90 days after graduation. That's nearly 35% higher than the U.S. employment rate for people with an independent living disability, and 39% higher than the state's employment rate for people with an independent living disability. And the independent life skills Ipsy students acquired, well, those can't even be quantified.
I was like really living independently. Like I was living in a 25-story apartment building, like with almost everything a house already has. So I was like going out and getting my own groceries. I was making my own food.
They have prepared me life after college. Not have to, I won't have to rely on other people. Prepare me to be independent and prepare me to go into the real world.
You're gonna have to learn how to do like different types of things, like being able to do laundry, being able to clean up after yourselves, being able to run a house well, and not having your parents tell you what needs to be done and what needs to be done and what is the best for you to do, and you choose the best thing to do.
Just having the option to go to college is life-changing, especially considering the other alternative.
To be honest, if this ideal program did not exist, I wouldn't know where I would be. I would be probably still sitting at home, worried, troubled about what is my next step going to be.
Well, after graduating from high school, I would have been searching for a job like firsthand, and I have no idea how easy it would have been to find one as fast as I did.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Just doing well. I'm just excited for the school year to start up again.
It's that kind of excitement and hopefulness college inclusive programs instill in students. Students who say they want to make their family, their community, and their country proud.
I may have a chance with life no matter what possible things they throw at me. So I figure that I can change the world with just one touch.
PMA, that's the way I live my life. Positive mental attitude. You wake up every day, you're blessed. I'm very blessed that we got these programs because it helps kids with, you know, all different issues, you know, regardless if you got Down syndrome, anything. It gives them an opportunity for after school, and it gives them an opportunity to chase their dreams. And that's what it's gave me.
So I hope you all enjoyed that video. We love it. My name is Star Bruner. I am the transition director at the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities. Well, let's get started. And I'm going to be checking my notes on my phone. I'm not being inattentive. I will let you know that we will have dedicated breaks for questions throughout, but please feel free to stop me at any point and ask a question. And to give you an overview of what we'll be doing today, first we'll start with a very quick IPSI refresher for anyone listening who may not be familiar. We're going to talk about where we've been. We're going to talk about where we are, including some really great student stories. And we've got Georgia Tech Excel student Kwame Owusu here with us today, and he'll be speaking later. We're also going to talk about where we're going, and then we're going to speak about some advocacy needs that we have. So number one, what is inclusive post-secondary education? IPSI, as I'll be calling it for the rest of the presentation, or we'll be here all day. IPSI is just college. It's college for students who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. Gives them the opportunity to attend college alongside with their peers who may or may not have a disability. And very quickly, what are the hallmarks of a good IPSI program? Obviously, inclusion is really important. Our students are going to the same classrooms, same clubs, same dorms. Academics, these are real learning institutions. This is real higher education. These are not day programs. Accommodations, our students do receive extra help with schoolwork. They may receive modified test times or maybe length of projects, but there are administrators at each program that help tailor each student's course load with each professor. So it's a pretty intensive program. And then also, I think that IPSI programs are even more employment focused than typical college experiences. We really work hard to find our students paid internships and paid jobs, which obviously is really important to the disability community. And then lastly, the fun stuff, football games, affinity clubs, student government, dining halls. We have an Excel student at Georgia Tech who's in the marching band. We have at UGA's Destination Dogs, a student who connected so closely with her peer mentor that she ended up attending her wedding when she graduated. So real connections are being made. And I'm not going to read all of these, but our students do learn other things in IPSI programs like self-determination, motivation, social skills, transportation. On some campuses, that looks like learning the campus bus schedule, but on our rural campuses, that might look like learning how to navigate ride-sharing apps like Lyft or Uber. They also learn workplace skills, personal finance, and if you know anything about IPSI students, you know that they are civically engaged. They are highly visible when they get any opportunity to come to the Capitol. They participate in letter writing campaigns. You may have even received some, and they are really engaged in advocating for themselves and other students to get the opportunity for inclusive post-secondary. And a broad look at the map of IPSI in our state. We have 8 options with the 9th one coming in just a couple of months. I will go through all of these very quickly. There's Albany Technical College. Their program is called LEAP. That's in Southwest Georgia. That's our only technical college in the IPSI system. In West Central Georgia, we have Columbus State University. Their program is called GOALS. In Swainsboro, we have East Georgia State College with the Choice program. Here in Atlanta, we have Georgia Tech's Excel program, which again, you'll be hearing from a Georgia Tech student shortly. In Statesboro, there's Georgia Southern University. Their program is called Eagle Academy. At Georgia State, there's a cool program called IDEAL that focuses on digital media, arts, and literacy. They are singular in that they have a focus, unlike all of our other schools. So that's a great program. There's Kennesaw State, which is, I actually went to Kennesaw State. Charlie, who you'll hear from later, went to Kennesaw State. So this program is near and dear to our hearts. Their program is called the Academy for Inclusive Learning and Social Growth. And then when you think college in Georgia, you probably think University of Georgia. And so obviously UGA has joined us with a program called Destination Dogs. And filling in that central role in the middle of the state, where geographically very important for students to have options, will be Milledgeville's Georgia College and State University. It will be called Thrive, and that opens just in a couple months. So we're excited about that. Just so you can see the different capacities of each of the programs, you can see right away that Georgia Tech and Kennesaw State consistently are our largest programs, and they consistently make up almost exactly half of the student population every single year. So right now, this school year, we have 143 students enrolled. The video that you saw was based off of last year's data, so it was a little bit lower, so we've increased our enrollment. And you can see that the programs range in size from Kennesaw State's 40 being our oldest and largest program, all the way down to Georgia College will accept 4 students for their first semester. And here's a map of what IPSI looks like across the country. You'll be able to see probably better in your handout. Each state has a number in it, and that number represents the number of inclusive post-secondary education programs in that state. Excepting for Florida and North Carolina, you can see we're doing really well in the Southeast. And I did want to point out that Georgia has been a leader in IPSI consistently. We were an early adopter with KSU in 2011, and we got the ball rolling. We also have a really strong statewide coalition that other schools, other states like to model their programs off of. Susanna Miller-Raines, who may be streaming in today, helped get Georgia on the map as far as statewide coalitions, and we're really grateful to her for that. And then also, we are unique in that we do receive funding from the state budget, from this committee, and other states come to us, come to the Georgia Council to say, how can we get that done in our state? That's a really innovative idea. Let's do that too. So other states are really looking to us for leadership as far as IPSI. And if you're wondering, it's been a long time since I've had geography, so I didn't know what that big state was that has no IPSIs, that gray square in the upper left-hand corner, and that's Wyoming. So if anyone's interested, Wyoming needs to get on the IPSI train. This is just a simple representation of the legislative support that we've enjoyed over the past few years. You can see that starting in 2013, we received $100,000, and in 2015, that doubled. In 2017, that went up to $500,000, and that's the year that it went to Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation. But the following year, it returned back to Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities. And ever since then, that allocation has remained flat or below. You can see that 20 to 21, that was the year that we received statewide cuts. Our program somehow received 16% instead of 14%. So I'm not sure how that happens, but it really did affect our programs. And there are some strings attached to accepting this funding. Our schools must maintain good standing in our Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Consortium, and we refer to that as GAPESIC, and it is what it sounds like. It's a consortium of schools and agencies involved in IPSI in our state. This requirement for funding means showing up for meetings, participating, collaborating, that sort of thing. Our schools must also submit semesterly and yearly data for students, programs, and outcomes. This is a lot of data. For our larger schools, this is a very big ask, but it's an important one. And all of our schools must have CTP certification, which stands for Comprehensive Transition and Post-Secondary Certification. Having that CTP designation means you're an official IPSI program and your students are moving towards a meaningful credential. And the federal government says we will give your students Pell Grant money to attend these programs. So everyone accepting these state funds should either have their CTP or be within about a year of getting it. So we have a grace period. And involved in keeping your CTP, at least 50% of each student's course load must occur in an integrated setting. So in the same classes as students who may or may not have disability. And as a side note, most of our programs are 75 or even 100% inclusive. So this is a safe bar for right now. We also promote participation in fully inclusive social activities and clubs, not just IPSI clubs. You know, our students do enjoy hanging out with one another in IPSI programs, but we really encourage them to participate in pre-existing organizations. And then also, obviously, we want our programs to lead to individualized plans for each student that leads to competitive integrated employment, which is obviously the gold standard for people with disabilities. And here's a break for questions if you have any at this point.
No. I had one quick one just because I missed at the beginning when you were talking about the names of the programs. So I missed a couple. Albany, did it have a name?
It's called LEAP.
LEAP, okay. And then what about East Georgia in Swain?
Choice.
And the newest one?
It will be called Thrive, and that's at Milledgeville.
Those are just great names.
Great names.
They are great. Okay, good. Okay, great. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to dive into some data for the next few portions. You can see based on our last year's student survey, so 21 to 22, about 65% of our students are male and 35% are female. You can see about half of our student population is white, but 42.5% of our student population is Black or African American, with about 5% being Asian. And here you'll see that about 6% of our population identifies as Hispanic or Latino. And we do ask our students to self-identify their disability. Our students can select more than one, and you can see that the obvious leaders in these categories are intellectual disability and autism. That is very important because these programs are specifically for people with intellectual disabilities. And sometimes that does co-occur with autism, but not all students with autism have that intellectual component. So our programs are specifically for students with intellectual disabilities. And you can see there's a list of other options that students could select as well. And this is probably what you may be most interested in hearing today. You can see that for the past few years, our total number of students has ranged from 128 to this year's 143. Those 2 years in the middle, you can see our pandemic years. And so our enrollment dipped slightly, which reflects greater college numbers. Our number of graduates fluctuates. Last year we had 50 students. And then our percent of graduates employed within 90 days has gone from 54% to 48 to 58%. And I did want to say that we poll our students within 90 days of their graduation date. So this means within 3 months of their graduation date, we ask them, do you have a job, yes or no? And so this is the result of that question. And so if you think about maybe when you were in college and when I was in college, I did not have a job 3 months after graduation. So I think that these numbers are particularly impressive. And I always like to give you some context about these numbers. According to the Disability Statistics Compendium of 2020, for a comparable group of people with individuals with independent living disability, nationally, their employment rate is 19.2%. And in Georgia, that number falls to 15% employment. And so if you look at 15% compared to 58% employment, you can see that these programs are really doing some good work. I mean, here's some miscellaneous data from our last pool of graduates. Our graduates are working an average of 29 hours a week, and they're earning an average of $11.20 an hour. And you'll hear some great stories later of students who are making way above that. 88% of our graduates report being satisfied or very satisfied with their jobs, which I think is amazing because, again, my first job out of college, I wouldn't have been able to say that. Nobody look up what that job was. 39% of our graduates have received a raise within the last year, which is also really impressive. Not a lot of people can say that in this economy. 41% of our graduates have paid time off, with 32% also having access to paid sick leave. So our students are getting benefits. And 75% of our graduates live in a rented apartment or home that is not their family home. So they're getting benefits, they're getting more independent. And you can see that only 28% of last year's graduates live with their family members, and 22% live entirely independently. And then 97% of our graduates have health insurance. So you can see that being in IPSI leads to employment outcomes, independent outcomes, health outcomes with getting benefits. A lot of good things come out of IPSI that we're real proud of. And so on the next slide, you'll see we asked our students, did your experience in college help you get your job? So you can see that the vast majority of students said that their program helped a lot, or at least helped some finding a job after graduation. And so what does our governor like to say? Georgia is #1 for business. Our business community has really embraced our students. Our students are working across all industries, business sectors, big and small. Particularly small businesses love our students, make those local connections. And I'm not going to read the whole list, obviously, but I would like to point out the variety of sectors and business size and locations across the state. You will see Atlanta in the metro area being represented a lot in this list. But again, if you think about the fact that half of our student body comes from Kennesaw State and Georgia Tech, that would make sense. And from this list, I'll pull out the Center for Civil and Human Rights in Atlanta, Fort Yargo State Park in Winder, Emmanuel County School System in Swainsboro. These are some of the places that are employing our students or graduates. For the second half of the list, Phoebe Putney Memorial Hospital in Albany, they employ our students. There's Zoo Atlanta. There's a really neat boutique in Columbus, Georgia called the Posh Peach. It's difficult to say, but they love our students. The woman who runs the business there, she reaches out to the IPSI program there and says, bring me your students. I want to work with your students. And we have heard that from other programs across the state. I have heard from Kennesaw before that businesses in the Kennesaw area will call them and say, who do you have for us? We want your interns. We want your graduates. So you can obviously see that the business community appreciates our graduates and they're tapping into that workforce. And this next fun slide talks about where our students are getting their money for tuition for these programs. Some of these programs are quite expensive. Some of them are quite affordable. The most noticeable thing about this chart, I think, is the light blue bars that represents GVRA's amount of funding. You can see a sharp decline over the past 3 years in their funding. In 2020, GVRA changed their funding model for our students, and it significantly impacted who's able to attend college. Our technical college students are supported with tuition payments from GVRA, so that's what represents a good portion of that. And then also in 21 to 22, we were down a program. We did have an IPSI at West Georgia, Project Wolves, I think was the name of it. But they unfortunately lost their supporters there, graduated their students. So we had a year without a program there, but now we're getting back to base numbers with Milledgevilles. And you probably want to know where your money's going. We appreciate all of your money, and I do track where it's going and where it's being spent. You'll see over the past 5 years, and then that last year, the current year, that's a projection. I have their projected budgets. The largest portion you can see is that we're spending just over 50% of funds on personnel. These are those really important academic transition teacher positions that help students tailor their coursework with their professors. These are crucial and vital to these programs. You can see that we've been spending about a third of these funds on direct student scholarships, particularly in the time after GVRA's funding model changed. We also spend a consistent chunk of funds on peer mentors. And then there's a very small category of other, and that falls under materials like books, software, and then sometimes transportation. And here I'm going to stop for questions before we get into the student stories.
Representative Vanilla.
Yes, are all of these students in state? Are they all coming from Georgia? Or do
No.
students come from out of state? Like how much border crossing happens with students in different IPSI programs?
I don't have direct data on that, but I do hear from almost every program that they're getting from South Carolina, Alabama, sometimes Florida.
Okay, thank you.
Is the tuition different for out of state like it is in our other schools versus in state?
The tuition is, but the program fees aren't.
Okay.
Dan will be able to speak more to that later.
Okay.
He's the university guru.
The tuition would be based on the university's guidelines.
So the tuition would be based on the university's guidelines for in-state versus out of state.
Okay.
And next, we're going to show you some human stories for all those pools of data. I think you're going to really like some of these stories. Albany Tech's program wanted to tell you about William Hall. William graduated from LEAP in 2018. He is employed at Terra Foods manufacturing plant, earning $15 an hour, which is pretty darn impressive. Since graduation, he's purchased his own car and he's in the process of moving into his own apartment. So this is exactly the sort of outcomes that we want to see out of our programs. Columbus State University wanted us to tell you about Caleb Griffin. He began the Goals program just earlier this year in January. He's currently interning with CSU's Tackle Football Club, and I think that's him there to the right with the coach of that team. He is participating in Project CETA sessions, and Project CETA is another GCDD funded project. It stands for Students Enhancing Their Advocacy, and this is a one-year program, advocacy training program for IPSI students where they receive training and mentorship related to advocacy, leadership, and professionalism. And Caleb has also served as a peer leader for high school juniors and seniors during the summer bridge program this past year. So he's just in the program and he's already to lead other students into inclusive post-secondary education. And that's what that bridge program is. It helps high school juniors and seniors get a taste of the Columbus State campus and see if maybe IPSI might be right for them. Our next story is Sharonda from East Georgia State College. Sharonda is a first-generation college student. And we hear this frequently, particularly from those IPSIs down in the more rural parts of our state. And as you know, first-generation college students, that can be life-changing for a family's economic mobility. In her second year of study at Choice, she is taking classes in first aid and psychology. She also participates in Project CETA. I also met her at a networking event. She is actually a really lovely person. And she's employed as a peer mentor. So she works with incoming Choice freshmen. After graduating or while they get more seniority in their programs, a lot of our students reinvest in their programs and mentor younger students. So that's sort of a common theme that you'll see. She will graduate in spring of 2023. I'm sorry, I think the handouts may say 22, but it is 23. And she plans to seek employment as a paramedic or first responder. Here's a cool story from Georgia Southern's program. This is Max Champion. You can see him there on the left with the university president. He graduated just a few months ago. While attending, he moved off campus, so again, gaining that independence. He joined a fraternity, the Kappa Alpha Order. I don't know what that means, but I think it may mean a lot to some other people. I'm hearing it means good and bad things. So a lot of our students are getting more and more involved in Greek life, which I think is really exciting. It's great, right? It really shows that they're involved in campus and that students are accepting them and including them in activities that they really don't have to. So Georgia Southern is particularly good at promoting Greek life for students in the IPSI program. UGA does it pretty good as well. Max interned for the athletic department, assisting in identifying players for pictures and uploading videos to YouTube. In the fall, Max was accepted into Georgia Southern University to pursue his associate's degree, which is great. That's really impressive. And we're starting to see some of our students leaving our IPSI programs, going on to further their education. That's great, right? Yeah.
He's going into the Georgia State associate's degree.
Georgia Southern.
Georgia Southern. Okay.
I may have said state, excuse me.
No, I probably know.
So he's going to the same school, just seeking an associate's degree outside of the IPSI program.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I love this story. This is Nadia Osby from Georgia State University's IDEAL program. I think you'll really like this story as well. She graduated in fall of 2020. She studied sound design, film production, and marketing. And remember earlier I said IDEAL's program focuses on digital media, arts, and literacy programs. They have a really cool focus for their IPSI. Nadia interned with Georgia State Athletics Marketing Department and the campus newspaper. You can see her over there on the left with her newspapers. After graduation in spring of 2021, she began working as a security officer at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. She's now a security team's manager, so she has received a promotion also at Mercedes-Benz. And now she leads a team of 10 people, and she works all Atlanta United games, Atlanta Falcons games, as well as special events. So I have never led 10 people. I find this really impressive, and I'm really proud of the work that Nadia has done and that Georgia State University has done to prepare her. And she's currently making $18 an hour. Kennesaw State University wanted to tell you about Leah Maraska. She's in her second year of the Academic, Social, and Career Enrichment Program, which is the first 2 years of a possible 4-year program at Kennesaw State in their IPSI program. She'll graduate shortly. She's at a paid part-time position at the Night Owl on campus, and she has just been named Employee of the Month, which we're really excited for her. And again, you can see that she is pursuing advanced education. She plans to attend Beacon College next fall as a degree-seeking student. And everybody's favorite, UGA. They were excited to share Burke Lyle's story with you, and I am too. Burke graduated in May of 2022 with a certificate in college and career readiness in sports media. He completed courses in sports media and broadcasting, and he hosted and commentated on sports radio for radio station WUOG, which I think is the campus radio station. That's what it would sound like to me. He's a member of Grady News Source at UGA, which is a product of UGA's School of Journalism. He created his own podcast that highlights local high school sports in the Athens-Clarke County area. And now he is employed by UGA Athletics as a class checker and a fangineer by UGA Athletic Hospitality. And I will tell you what those two positions mean because I had to look them up. A class checker is someone who makes sure that student athletes are meeting their classroom attendance requirements, which I think is a cool job. I would love that. I'm sometimes called a chief compliance officer. Also, a fangineer is a student or graduate who welcomes crowds to large athletic events at Sanford Stadium. And you can see through Burke's story that through line between his college study, his personal interests and passion, and his eventual career. And next, I'm going to pass it to Kwame Owusu. He is a current Excel student at Georgia Tech, and he's going to tell his own story. So welcome.
Hello, good morning. How you doing? Okay. So let me tell you about my story. Before coming to Excel, I never had a paid job. The teachers at high school encouraged me to get jobs. I tried to work at Walmart and a lot of different jobs while I was in high school, but didn't have any luck. It was probably okay because my parents wanted me to focus on school. Excel helped me get jobs. I worked at the post office on campus, the CRC, which stands for Campus Recreation Center, which was my favorite. I was a chef assistant at a sorority house. Right now, I have an internship off campus with the student housing warehouse. I was going to work at Tech Dining during my sophomore year, but later got a job at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport in February 2021. In my careers class, I was invited to a virtual job fair for the companies at the airport. I choose to apply for Paradise Lagrande. I had never heard of them before this job fair. It took 2 months with all the clearance and background checks. So I finally started in April of 2021. I still work there now. And anytime they are hiring, I tell all my friends. I am a stock replenisher for the retail stores like the CNBC News store on Concourse A. Before I came to college, I didn't know what a lot of jobs were, like an RA, also known as resident assistants. In my class, my mentors and coaches and my academic advisor suggested jobs for me that they thought I could do. I always have a good work ethic because my employer treats me very well. I can also train new employees to do their best while working at the airport. I am a good leader. I'm always learning new things. I'm an advocate and supporter. I plan to get my own place after graduation. Don't let anybody tell you which job you can take or jobs you can't do. Living your dreams and try to focus on your career before going to college and while you're in high school, because high school helps you a lot. College is an option for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is so nice to see you. I have visited the Excel program before over the years. I know what a strong program it is, and just so glad that you've participated and then done so well.
Thank you very much. This is something that I wanted. This is the college that I want to go. I just want to make friends. I want to build connections with the clubs and the organizations and with other colleges around in the state, not just this state, but around the country and around the globe.
That is wonderful. I know you'll be a leader in that as well. Representative Anolin.
I have been a leader for years. I just want to be a leader.
Excellent.
Kwame, I have heard great things about you, and I've heard great things about the Excel program. You are very impressive. And being a Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket is such a special opportunity and privilege. And I am so glad you are able to have this opportunity to go to Excel and be a Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket.
Thank you for the compliment. I'll take that.
Excellent. Excellent. I think that's all of our questions right now. Thank you.
Great job, Kwame. Thank you. Am I close enough to this? Everyone can hear me still? Yeah. And so I just have a couple more slides about our advocacy needs, but I can pause here. Do you have any questions about the student stories that you've just heard?
I don't think so. And I don't see any coming up online right now. So thank you. Let me ask you this. There was one. I noticed, I think it was when you were talking about Georgia Southern, perhaps you talked about the bridge program.
This Columbus State, yes.
Yeah, Columbus. Okay. And that is a high school opportunity, I think, as I understood it, to see. Do most of the colleges also have that? Or is there, I know there are orientations, or there are also opportunities for students to visit.
Yes. Carol at Destination Dogs is going to not be happy that I've forgotten the name of their program, but they do. They do a summer intensive as well. Georgia Tech does something similar. I'm pretty sure Kennesaw does as well. Georgia Southern, I think, does as well. Those are the ones that I can remember from the top of my head, but they do similar things.
So families that are interested can usually find most of them on their individual websites, I would say.
Yes.
Possibly. Okay, thank you.
Great. So advocacy, that's what Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities loves to get people to do, to advocate for themselves. And we are here to educate and inform you as well. Obviously, particularly after the funding model shift from GVRA, scholarships are very important to our families. You probably already know this, but maybe some of us, some of those listening online may not know this, but families have traditionally not been saving for our students, for children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Teachers in the past have not known this was an option because it wasn't. They weren't suggesting parents save for it. Many families do save for college. But our students probably weren't saving for college, or those college funds would be spent on support services along the way. And while IPSE students can access federal student aid through Pell Grants, they are not eligible for the Hope Scholarship, which I get a lot of phone calls from parents about that, who are bewildered as to why one child can apply for Hope and why their sibling cannot. This year, we're going to explore a pathway to a parallel lottery-funded scholarship that can support our IPSE students. We're really excited about it. We have a group of family advocates who have a real fire in their belly. As these programs grow, the parent pool grows as well, and they're very excited to pursue any sort of opportunity to advocate for their students. And as you may know, the Georgia Lottery is up to a $1.1 billion surplus, which is a whole lot of money. And we did some sort of back of the napkin math. A $7,000 scholarship for each of about 140 students is less than $1 million. So you can see this is very affordable, and you've already heard about some of the wonderful outcomes we have. So the return on investment there is significant. Please talk to your friends on the Higher Education Committee because we'll need their support as well. So again, our greatest current needs are scholarship funding. We also obviously really appreciate your ongoing program investment and continued support into inclusive post-secondary education. We really thank you for that. We would also like to see an annualization of our most recent one-time request for funds to strengthen our technological infrastructure. And this is something really interesting that, as Darcy hinted at earlier, our pool of alumni is deepening, is growing wider as well. So we really want to have some sort of resource available to them where maybe they have somewhere to go to look for job boards, or maybe employers can go somewhere online to seek out our students after they graduate. And we also want to make that a mutually beneficial relationship. So maybe if we have a position funded for someone to collect this data that is so important, just one person, she'll be getting, he or she might be getting data from these students. And then we'll also be offering resources in return. Georgia Tech actually already does an alumni program really well. So we have a great model to work from. And then we would also love to see the increase of our current allocation just to keep pace with our student body, which is growing. Our number of programs are bouncing back up, and the rising costs due to inflation. Our allocation has been flat or below for a few years, but colleges are not immune to the rising costs of inflation. And questions before I pass it to Dr. Daniel Crimmins.
I am not seeing any right now. Do we have any online at all, Amber? No. So thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Great.
A lot of good information.
And now I'll introduce you to Dr. Daniel Crimmins. He is the godfather of Georgia inclusive post-secondary education. And he's going to tell you some good pieces of national data.
Great. Thank you. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take that as a welcome back. I have been before this committee, I think 2 or 3 times. It's been a while, and I am now a retired professor from the Georgia State University. So this is one of those times in these rooms where I'm supposed to say "Go Panthers," but it doesn't have the same resonance as some of your more historical programs and their athletic programs. So I was asked to do 2 things today. One was to kind of say, let's take a look at what are the national data on sort of long-term outcomes for these programs and these students. And then I'm going to say I'll take a bit of a pivot into kind of illustrating or extending a little bit of what Star just talked about in terms of sort of future directions. So what do we know about the programs? You heard the case studies. You've seen some of the data. These programs are pretty effective at getting students jobs. Students who attend IPSC programs are 5 times more likely than students with intellectual disabilities in their states to have jobs over the long haul. They are 1.5 times more likely than adults being served by their VR agency to have jobs, paid jobs. What are the predictors that they work during their programs and they complete their programs? Surprise, surprise. If you go to school, you finish your program, you finish, you've had work experiences, you go out, you're ready to work. Then what happens? 60% 1 year out still have a job. 2 years out, 66% have jobs. And 3 years out, 67% have jobs. So one of the things that's, I think, most important about this is that these are not, we are sometimes, I had to go to the National Coordinating Center to ask one of our colleagues there for these kind of data, because we don't really have the means to track lots and lots of students nationally for this kind of thing. And that's clearly part of that last ask that Star said out loud. But what's just critically important is that people, they get employed and stay employed. So it's not a transitory thing. And why is that important? So not only are they more likely to be employed for more hours at higher wages and in a greater range of vocations. And so one of the things I think Kwame spoke to is that idea that he tried out 5 or 6 jobs during his program. And, I like to say to people, what do you learn in college? Some of what you learn is, what do you want to do? And what are you sure as shooting about you don't want to do? So I worked for 2.5 years in a nursing facility during my college years. And I knew that I didn't want to make that my career. Thank you very much. But it was important work. It was valued work, but not what I wanted to do the rest of my life. So, and then I think there's one study that I think is really compelling. And it's sort of, I think one of the reasons to put this in front of you as a committee and in your roles as stewards of the taxpayer, that post-secondary education was cost efficient. It costs money. You've provided us money, and cost effective. And in the payback in terms of reduced benefits and taxes paid by then employees is about the 30-month mark. You stay employed for 30 months, you get a positive return on investment. I think that's an intriguing statistic. So do things cost money in the short run? Yes, they do. But is it forever? And that was the one I thought compelling, because it's not horribly simplistic. 28 months is not an insignificant amount of time, but that's why I had to show you the last slide that showed that they're still employed at 3 years. So a couple of things. Thank you for naming me as the Godfather. I'm not sure that could be a dubious distinction, but we've grown programs since I started this work, and started in about 10 years ago, and with your support and frankly, $2.5 million in federal money that we were able to bring to Georgia over a 5-year period. We grew from 3 to 7 programs. And so that investment of federal money really helped us to grow. Your investment has helped us to sustain, absolutely. During that time, I know my experience with inclusive post-secondary education on the national level was that it looked to be a very middle to upper middle class opportunity. And when we started off on this in Georgia, we just said, our programs will look like Georgia. We will serve diverse students. We will serve students from all geographies. We were going to do our best to get out there in every part of the state. And you saw the map that showed that. I think, sort of with the means we have, we've done that. The star showed the demographic breakdown of roughly 40% of the students are African American, 60% are Caucasian. I don't know why we get more boys than girls, but that might just be a disability statistic. But I think we've done a good job in Georgia at sort of creating opportunities in lots of places. Now, I would say I don't think we've done quite enough. I would love to do more. I'd love for Georgia to do more. I think students want to go to the same colleges as their brothers and sisters. This is a state where people have great pride in institutions. Yellow Jackets, Dogs, Panthers, whatever they might be. And we have had programs approaching us at the consortium saying, what could you do to help us get started? And the other thing I will say is that though I am retired from the university, one of my roles in all of this over the years has been how to create the business plan within a university that allows you to run a program. These are not charity programs in the universities. Universities don't run on charity. They want programs to be self-sustaining, and they require funding mixes to do that. And part of our job for the years has been, how do we juggle those funding mixes? So when programs have said, we'd love to start a program, they said, can you give us some seed money? And I'll get to that in a second. So I've been given permission to say 2 names out loud, even though I'm not putting them on slides, but we've had some brief exploratory discussions with Gordon State College in Barnesville. They're open to exploring this. And most recently to a small college in Northwest Georgia that the Madam Chair might be familiar with, Perry College, that gave me permission to say their name out loud, that they would be willing to explore this. And then I'm going to say that, because these are programs that have to be self-sustaining within the universities, we have to create the business case for that. So we have 8, almost 9 programs now. You saw the graph earlier, the map earlier. Additional programs require some new investments. Our finding over the last 10 years has been, it takes about at least 1 full year to get this up and going. It usually takes about a year of exploration with a small amount of money to get people on board. And then what we call it is sort of the idea of installation. And that's where you get the registrar's office to talk to the admissions office to create the student record and the codes. And there's just a lot of, universities are bureaucratic places, that. So they require 1 or 2 years of advanced work, and it requires somebody on the campus to be a champion. That person has to be able to dedicate, I'm going to say roughly a quarter to half time to sort of carrying the cause forward with administrators and colleagues, faculty and staff. We're now serving about 140 students a year. You saw the numbers there. That translates to about 65 to 70 new students. So entering freshmen, we'll call them. My estimate, looking at the rates of student, the number of students exiting special education in our state, it's my best estimate is about 1,000 students. I think that's pretty conservative. Exit each year, who would be potential candidates from the standpoint of them having an intellectual disability, and then having not having access to regular college admission processes, who will then, what's next for them? as my wife's son, we have the discussion sometimes of children, young students, young adults graduating to the remote control in the couch. So these are opportunities that provide an alternate vision to that. Thank you. On behalf of this group, you have allocated $500,000 a year for the last several years. We have a funding formula. Those monies get distributed to programs based on whether they're 2 or 4 year programs, their number of students. It's actually got the formula was shared with all of the program directors, and nobody complained vehemently. So I think that was a testimony to the fact that I had found some kind of a right. The hole in the needle was such that we were able to thread it. As Star mentioned before, these funds support personnel, scholarships, and operations. There was a request this committee received for the little budget for technology infrastructure. Should that be granted, the window of time that the little budget can be spent is really not such that it could go to program operations, because it would be, frankly, it would be between March and June, and universities are crazy places in that time. What do we hope? There's 1,000 students entering this pool each year, which would be nice to get to 150 of them. So I'm a pie in the sky guy. So I'm 150. Roughly double the number. In order to do that, we'd have to increase the capacity a bit of the existing programs. We would have to add new programs. We'd have to diversify funding streams. So one way to do this, if the $100,000 was annualized, that would go to the current programs following the distribution formula, allowing them to essentially beef up their infrastructure to support new students. We're guessing that would be maybe, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 students per campus. Wouldn't be a huge number, but if 8, that's 40 students right there. Adding new programs. Again, pie in the sky. It would be lovely to add 1 new college and 1 new technical school each year over the next several years. Each program we think would probably serve between 10 and 20 students. That if there was an investment of $100,000, we could invest in sort of that. Those monies could be rolling monies that would then, as programs got up and got going, they would no longer have the startup funds, and the funding would go to new programs over the course of several years. Adding 1 or 2 programs a year is doable. Adding more than that, given our history with the federal funding, is hard, and frankly, $100,000 wouldn't be nearly enough. But $100,000 would allow consistent growth over the next 3-4 years, probably to add another, as many as half a dozen programs. And with that, and let me just remind myself. So we mentioned, in order to do this, we think it's important if we could find a more consistent and predictable scholarship base for some of the families. The percentage of dollars coming from families is pretty significant. It's about 30 to 40%, I believe, on the statewide level. We are GVRA does support the technical schools, the technical colleges, and that's one of the reasons I think that we would very much want to expand the technical college programs, is that there's a more immediate availability of funding for the programs. And the other issue is that there's a very significant number of students. I'm sorry, I'm giving my age away, calling them children, and I shouldn't, of young adults attending the technical colleges. And if students are going to go where their brothers and sisters go, then they go to technical colleges too. But we do see some prospects there. GVRA has worked to make $3,000 a semester available for 4 semesters for a whole set of activities on all of the campuses now. So that's some funding that is available to the programs. And then we do see that there's other potential to work with our behavioral health and our education departments to identify other funding streams. So I think that's me. Okay, the results would be, if we, with this, could we increase capacity to 150 new students per year from about 65, 70? That would mean that 300 to 400 students were served each year. So there's the new ones, and then there's the folks in either 2 and 4 year experiences. Increase the number of programs of 8, soon to be 9 to 15 or more, 14. Increase program access to colleges, universities, technical colleges across Georgia. We're still a little thin in Southwest Georgia, although it's not a highly populous area. We're still a little thin in Northwest Georgia. And frankly, the capacity, though the 2 largest programs in the state are here in Atlanta Metro, so is 2/3 of the population in the state. So there's certainly room for, I think there's be a demand for students in the Atlanta Metro area to be served here. So, and then the other result of that is doubling the number of students exiting each year. And so then we get to go back to those happy statistics of people, getting jobs, keeping jobs, and paying taxes. And joining the workforce. So I thank you. And I too will pause for questions before I hand it over to my colleagues for the wrap up.
Thank you, Representative Miller.
A couple of questions. One, first of all, I think you nailed it when you said that the primary alternative for these students is to graduate to the remote control on the couch. And we know that that is something that the state will, in many ways, ultimately be subsidizing in terms of disability payments, all of those other things, the state being state and federal government. So I think that there is a very worthwhile and fiscally responsible argument to be made for increasing funding for these programs on the front end, helping these kids be the independent adults that they want to be and that their families want them to be, and that we as a society really, should want them to be. So I'm glad you said that, because I think that really nails what the alternative is for so many of these young people. I wanted to ask, and also I'm glad you pointed out, you mentioned that private universities are beginning to look into these programs, because that's a question I had also, because we have a very vibrant and robust and geographically diverse community of university and colleges here in Georgia. So I'm glad, and I think this is a very interesting business opportunity for them to think about. I wanted to ask specifically about fundraising and development. And are there opportunities for these programs to participate in development and fundraising the same way that the regular the same way that the universities do? How does that typically work, and is that an option?
Yes, it's an option. I think on different campuses, it is there are different levels of priority on campus for how much of an option it will be actively. I agree totally that is a source that many of us have spent whole careers not really tapping into and are not that familiar with. I do know that certainly of the 2 largest programs in the state, I think they were very active efforts at different points in their development for philanthropic support. So yes, it's out there. Are we doing it in as coordinated a fashion as we might? Speaking as a person that retired mid-pandemic, we had some discussions within the consortium of having all the programs bring their university development people to a meeting and saying, what do we do, folks? That was derailed by people saying, I have to provide an educational experience for students that is by the regulation not allowed to be a distance learning experience, and yet everybody on campus is distance learning, and how do we do? So we were sort of set back. I do think that could be put back on the agenda for future coordinated effort. I know it happens in distributed ways, but it's not been as focused, and we've not bragged about it as much as we should, probably because it's been an area in which there is, I'll just say politely, then there's a sense of it being a zero-sum game. So if I'll say I'm at Georgia State and you're at UGA and we both go to the same philanthropist, we're not both going to get $10,000. Somebody's going to get 20 and somebody's going to get 0. And so that would be that'd be the one area that I'll say there might be some competition. Other than I'll say, I think that the consortium has done a great job of keeping people focused on our common commitments and really how that we really do need to be we need to be in the lifeboat with the rising tide. Maybe that's a bad use of metaphors. We need to be in the boat with the rising tide. And how do we support each other? But I think it is a potential opportunity.
No, I appreciate that you answered that very diplomatically, because that's really what I wanted to get down to, sort of the meat of like if you, for example, if you are the Excel program at Georgia Tech, and this is a complete hypothetical, but if you're in the Excel program and you contact, the Georgia Tech Office of Development, is there even room for that conversation, or is that, and I liked the idea you had, that of bringing all of these development offices together, because I would think that there would be campus-wide benefits for having these programs, but I also understand that there are only so many foundations, and everyone is asking for the same dollars from the same foundations.
Yeah, but though, to speak to that point, when I met with the development people at Georgia State, they were actually pretty encouraging in the sense that they're saying, like, your interests, and I'll say it wasn't just for the IDEAL program, it was also for the center that I directed, but your interests are not really the same as what our existing donor pool is doing. Our existing donor pool likes, sports or arts or music or, or buildings. We need to find somebody who might enter our donor pool who is connected to a disability identity, who would say, this is what my son, daughter, niece, nephew, grandchild, they could benefit from a child like this, and therefore come into the university's pool. So in that sense, we would have to be equally diplomatic in working with our development offices to say, look at how this is an opportunity for you. So she said I was the godfather. I guess our godfather's diplomatic. I don't know. Madam Chair.
I don't see any other questions at this time. None online either. Thank you so much. And for all the many years of dedication you put into this and the great understanding and grasp you have.
Well,
So
you've been one of our heroes for certain, and you know that. So we appreciate
I believe
you.
in it.
And your other members.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I believe so. Oh, Lord.
We probably have it too tight right there. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I can think small thoughts. And I can usually fit. Oh, no, I'm good. Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Charlie Miller. I'm Legislative Advocacy Director for the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, and I'm so excited to be here speaking to y'all about something that's very close to my heart, inclusive post-secondary. And as Georgia Tech and the Panthers and other folks have been represented, I gotta say I am a Kennesaw State alumni from their IPSC. Go Owls! So I gotta have school spirit sometimes, y'all. But today I get to really advocate for the whole IPSC community. These organizations, these schools, these opportunities really bring an opportunity for people with disabilities. And they are one of the most important things that we can do for the disability community in Georgia. We always say, like my colleague Star Bruner said, the governors have always said Georgia is the #1 place to do business. This time and time again has showed Georgia is ready for inclusive post-secondary to help bring more opportunities for employment for people with disabilities. I want to give the closing advocacy needs today. And I just want to restate that we are working on pursuing lottery funded scholarships for our students with disabilities. We are working on funding a data administrator alumni network to a coordinator position. This opportunity will be really useful for alumni who are working to just build a relationship, build a relationship with their IPSEs. And then also we're looking to annualize the recent one-time ask that we have submitted with y'all. These opportunities are going to really help push the disability community in the right direction. And then lastly, like always, y'all, I think a common theme that we've heard today is thank you. Thank you a lot for the support and the opportunity you've given the inclusive post-secondary community in Georgia. We're constantly looking at program and capacity expansion through an increase in the allocation in the near future. And y'all, I want to say thank y'all for listening today. It really helps. So I want to say thank you, and we are open for any questions. And don't worry, I've always been taught that sometimes you don't gotta be the smartest person in the room. You gotta know the smart people to bring in the room. And I've brought my smart people in the room.
I love it. I love it. You are definitely correct. Very smart people. Very smart people. Are there any questions from committee members or any of our members that might be online? Not seeing any. You brought such smart people. Y'all have already answered everything.
Apparently.
So I want to particularly thank Charlie and Kwame, though, because I think as we walk forward in this, as we do every year, it is so important to know you, to hear your hearts, and to have your personal image with us as we begin this discussion, because it is very real. And it is such a huge opportunity. I've been privileged to see many of the success stories over the years, and many who are walking that path right now and who hope to walk that path. So I appreciate the exploration y'all are doing in the many ways to try to make this more affordable, more accessible, and just to have more opportunity for students across the state. So not seeing any questions, I want to say thank you. Persevere, stay in touch. January is just right around the corner. At this point, none of us know what we'll be serving on or doing. It's a whole new year and a whole new time, but I don't think you'll be able to push us away from caring about this and following it wherever we may be serving. So thank you so much. Y'all have a great day. Look forward